Located in an underground bunker somewhere in Madison, Indiana, is a different kind of podcast. Welcome to Loudmouth with your host, Dean Stidham.
Hey, everyone,
Ugly,
welcome.
You're disgusting. I'm going to kill you. Give me $200.
We got to get the Dr. Phil thing out of there, guys. It's driving me crazy. Anyway, I want to welcome you. It is a Thursday, late afternoon, and got a great show on tap for you today. I have a gentleman who's a busy guy. He's the owner of a Hoosier Media Network, also operates several radio stations. I'll let you or let him clue you in on a few of those. And also, he is the current host at the Voice of Reason. Welcome to Loudmouth, Andy Hoosier. Andy, it's nice to have you on board, my friend.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Dean. I appreciate it.
And so how are you doing today?
You know, we are living the dream. We've had a busy year, as you mentioned. It's been extremely busy as we just had our primary elections here in Kansas. We're getting ready for the general election. We're trying to at least bring a little bit of common sense and reason and back into the world of politics. And it's a never-ending fight each and every day.
Okay, now, did you guys have any mail-in voting going on in this state? Or
We did, actually. Yeah, over half of the votes that came in actually were requested by mail-in ballots. Back in 2016, at the last election, they saw roughly about 50,000 requests for mail-in ballots in the state of Kansas. And this election, actually, they reported over 320,000 mail-in ballots in the state. So that was a bit different. I did vote in person, and I got to see that process, and it was a really great process. I think that we're in good shape to be able to open up polling places for the general election if allowed to do so. But Kansas is kind of nice. I mean, we have a total of 2.8 million registered voters in the state. So it's not the largest populated state. And our Secretary of State here, Scott Schwab, is a fantastic guy. He's definitely doing what he can to keep the polls open. And even though we had an increase in mail-in ballots, which we did see some discrepancies on some of those, which we can talk about a little bit later if you'd like, we did have a very successful turnout with people showing up in person. And we had about a 25 to 28% turnout rate for the primary, which for primaries, usually seeing 8 to 12% turnout, a 25 to 28% actually isn't too bad.
Well, you know, with that being said, and I was talking to you off air, and of course, most of my listeners and viewers know on YouTube that I do have a medical condition. And I've been saying this from day one. I'm going to jump all over the place with you on a lot of different categories because I know you're a busy man. I'm not going to have a lot of your time. So anyway, the point I was going to make here was if I catch anything out there, it's going to be a death sentence for me because I do have the pulmonary fibrosis thing going on. But with that said, everybody's going to stores. I'm going to stores. I mask up. You got to be diligent. And Trey Gowdy, I think, raised a great point. I was watching on a newscast yesterday. He mentioned, why not just have 2 or 3 days where we can go vote instead of just the one, trying to squeeze everything into one? Because if we can social distance in stores, I'm sure we can social distance while voting.
Well, that's exactly the point. If you can show up and you can go to the grocery store, you can go to warehouses and go to Walmart. If you can go even to restaurants, which many places have restaurants open, some have them closed. But if you can go to any other place, if you can even go to work where there's multiple people around, you can go and vote. And I thought, again, that the polling places here were extremely efficient. Let me tell you that when I walked in, first off, I live in a small little county to where we didn't have to wear masks. The polling workers did wear them, but we didn't have to wear them. So I showed up, I signed in, showed them my ID card, and they gave us one of those styluses, the pen with the little touchscreen deal on the back of the pen. I signed in with that. I went to the polling machine. I punched it using the pen that they had opened up out of a package for me and then gave it to me, and I grabbed it. I punched in my codes and voted on the voting machine, and I walked out. I didn't touch a single thing in the entire process of actually voting. It was extremely efficient. It worked really well. It kept the safety and the health of everyone. And I think that it's a perfect system that I think a lot of states should be able to use as an example to where we don't have to be forced to talk about this only mail-in ballots for November, because there's plenty of ways for them to be able to make sure everybody is safe and secure going into the polling booth in November. And you're right. I mean, early voting, we did early voting here. We had about a week of early voting where you could walk into the polling place and the polling places were open a good 3-4 days before election day. So you can go and vote and not have to worry about being in long lines and long crowds.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Of course, and the most important thing is for everyone to vote. But yeah, to try mail-in voting throughout this U.S., and I know there are some states that have been on top of it and been doing it for a few years, and that's a different thing. But some like Nevada, just throwing all these out in the mail. I just I don't have a lot of faith in U.S. Postal Service. I don't say that directly to the men and women who are postal workers, but I've had some packages that I've even had insured that never reached their destination. No one could ever find them. And trust me, if you ever have to go down that road, it's a total nightmare. Never did get reimbursed. But anyway, and of course they're talking about cutting, the mail services all the time as well. So I think that could just be a bad road to go down myself. But
it could be bad. I mean, we did have issues here in Kansas. I mean, one of our counties did report they put. The county election officer actually put about 800 mail-in ballots into the U.S. Postal Service mailbox, and roughly 50 or 60 went missing. They couldn't find them. They ended up recovering them. But even they admitted that, you know what, I don't think the Postal Service was prepared for the amount of mail-in ballots that we put into the mailbox and that was getting there. And they ended up finding them, luckily. But in larger cities, I mean, we're in a small place like Kansas. Imagine that happening in a big city somewhere where so many mail-in ballots just end up going missing and they're never found. And luckily they were able to correct it here, but it did raise a red flag of, if they're not able to handle the primary election right now, what's it going to look like if we do all mail-in ballots for a general election when we have a lot more turnout even then?
I totally agree. And there again, I feel like it's safe for everyone to just go out. They're going to be diligent. And I'm in a small town as well. We're in Madison, Indiana, and we're actually about an hour from Louisville, an hour and 10 minutes from Cincinnati, and about an hour and 20 from Indianapolis. So we're centrally located we're actually out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a nice rural town. And a lot of people are not masking up here, as you said, probably, the way it sounds like it could be in Topeka there. Are you actually in Topeka, Kansas, or what is your actual?
I'm just north of Wichita. I'm in a little town just north of Wichita.
Okay. Now, and I checked last night. Kansas, I guess they're known for their landmark Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education, which was overturned. I think it was Plessy versus Ferguson, declared racial segregation in public schools to be unconstitutional. I did not know that. So that's one thing you guys are known. Of course, we won't go down the sports road because you guys are known for your Kansas Jayhawks as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, Kansas is really dug into history, especially when it comes to the segregation, when it comes to racial equality. I mean, it all started here. Yeah, Brown v. Board of Education came out of Topeka, and it was huge back in the day. And we still have, I mean, we're very prideful here in Kansas of the racial equality, fighting to end segregation. I mean, it started here in the state of Kansas, and we're very lucky. When it comes to the sports thing, I'm originally from Ohio, so I'm a Buckeye. So I try to stay out of the whole K-State, KU battle that goes on here in Kansas because it is pretty brutal. But I will say that politically speaking at the universities, Kansas University is definitely way more progressive and more liberal on campus as the KU Jayhawks. I mean, they're the ones that end up giving you name tags for the pronoun that you'd like to be referred to as on campus. And they've had university professors say some outlandish things on the KU ground. So politically speaking, I would have to lean more towards the mindset of K-State, even though they're not completely conservative either. But sports-wise, I try and stay out of that battle.
Boy, that's an interesting battle to go down. I was trying to tell some of my listeners the last show that I was doing that I think we are messing with so much, and they're the Black Lives Matter. Most of us get that. And what happened to George Floyd was I've never heard anybody come out and say that was justified. Not anyone. So we know that was a bad deal, but what that has kicked off, and the BLM thing. First of all, I think it's a front myself, and I just don't know how long, Andy, we have to keep going on and apologizing for things that really we had no control over. And
there's a few different ways to be able to take this. So first off, you're right. I mean, no one, when they saw the video of George Floyd, no one said, wow, you know what, that was totally justified. No one said that. Even law enforcement. We had our police chief here in the city of Wichita come out and say, that's not what we practice. That's not what we do. That looks like murder to me. There's no way that I would sanction my law enforcement officers to handle an individual like that in any way, shape, or form. Law enforcement all over the nation said the same thing. There's no reason why that should have happened. And we all united. We united at one point and said, you know what, this is wrong, and we need to expose bad police officers. We support law enforcement, we support cops, but we don't support that type of action. And whether we need to update the statutes on how they get trained, whether we need to expose just corrupt law enforcement officers, whatever we have to do, something needs to be done. And we united for the first time in a very long time as a nation. Now, that's something the progressives didn't quite understand because they were already putting their guard up saying, oh my gosh, look, conservatives don't like this and conservatives want black people to die. And they are, law enforcement supporters already want this person to die. And they already put up their guard when they shouldn't have needed to. And the protests at the very beginning were justified. I got it. I understood it. You know what? Yeah, that was wrong. And we need to stand up and make a voice heard for something like that. Then the radicals took hold like they always do. The ones that want to cause the havoc, the anarchists that aren't really fighting for anything needed or necessary, but they're doing it just for the sake of doing it to cause anarchy and havoc. They're the ones that we saw start looting buildings and burning buildings and breaking into law enforcement places and burning down, tearing apart cars and ripping people out of their vehicles in the middle of the street. They're the anarchists that took hold of the movement, and the movement's message ended up getting lost. Now, I don't know if you've seen it, but just a couple of days ago, new video of the body cam came out from the law enforcement. Of course, not by media in the United States, but by media in the UK, where they released the body cam footage of law enforcement leading up to the event with George Floyd. And of course, just like every other time that we've always seen, it's way more complicated of a situation than what we had seen, where he was apparently, obviously on drugs, very much so, and he was talking over officers, and he had fought them the entire time. And when they put him in the back seat of the vehicle, he said that he was very claustrophobic, and he started screaming and losing his mind and going nuts. And that's when they drug him out of the back because he was going into a frenzy, and they put him on the ground, and then we saw the video from there on after. So it opens up another discussion of, well, he was on drugs, he wasn't cooperating with law enforcement. Still, should it have happened? No, obviously not. But the way he handled himself leading up to the point where he was on the ground with a knee in his neck killing him was completely uncalled for, and it could have been completely avoided again. So it leaves another discussion open, but of course the progressives don't want to listen to that. They don't want to hear it. They want to say that he's still completely innocent and just all cops are bad. And now you see the protests that are wanting to, the autonomous zones taking over parts of communities, wanting to completely defund police, wanting to completely abolish police. And this is the movement now because he is now a martyr for the movement to try and cause anarchy in the streets of America.
Yeah, and I had as most people can probably relate to this. Most of us have probably someone we know, or at least maybe even a family member that is in law enforcement. I had a cousin who did a show a couple of shows back with me, a retired police officer, and we were talking. This was right after the Floyd situation. He wasn't quite. He was a little confused on the fact that it was a $20 bill. I guess was counterfeit. Was the whole reason the police were called. He thought it was a little overreaction, but yeah, I've seen the whole footage on that as well. And that's something that it's always taken out of context. We get these little clips and of course, we're on videotape anywhere we go, or on camera, I should say. But, talking about that again, the murder rates and well, I'm jumping around here all over the place, but back to Black Lives Matter, just a second, if I can. The thing I think that's getting missed, and really this all maybe even started with Kaepernick taking the knee. And I've had that discussion as well. I think he was wrong. I still think he was wrong. And people said, well, he has a constitutional right. Well, technically they're wrong. He does not. And he works for a business, a privately owned business. And I would be fired if I had done that type of situation. With that being said, I just think that these sports are icons. They're things that have been around forever. Their fathers and have taken their sons. They've shared stories at these baseball games. And now people are boycotting. We're losing American icons due to the fact that people are kneeling when the national anthem is being played. I just don't understand why they have to make their point there. And now, is it going to be okay if we do go to a sporting event and I guess the black anthem will be played? If we take a knee, is that another whole controversial thing? What do you think about all that, Andy?
Yeah, it's a mess. It really is. You're right. I mean, the sports was the outlet away from politics. People have been taught for so long that you don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table and at the family reunions, which is my favorite thing to do, by the way. But they tell you not to do that because it's controversial and we don't. And the outlet away from the politics, away from the crazy world, away from having to get frustrated and angry was the world of sports, going to watch a baseball game, going to spend time with the family, going to watch a football game or a basketball game. And unfortunately, the politics has bled into that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, what Colin Kaepernick did when he knelt for the flag, they said it's First Amendment speech. You can do that when you're off the field and not on the clock, actually working and getting paid to do something. You can protest all you want. You can fight for whatever movement that you want to, all you want outside of the field. But when you have the jersey on and you're on the clock and you're doing your thing, that's when you actually work for the company. And the company can fire you for anything that you may or may not do. If you remember, they weren't allowed to wear socks years ago trying to support law enforcement down in Texas that ended up dying in some type of event, some type of shooting. They weren't allowed to do that, but somehow we're allowed to kneel for the flag. Now this year, they're talking about putting up the Black Lives Matter flag underneath the United States flag during the games, that they want to do the Black Lives Matter national anthem, which I don't even know what that is, after the American national anthem. They've now caved to the inmates, so to speak, in the sense that they're allowing the workers to dominate what's going to happen. And so many people are walking away from it. The ratings are going to go down. Even during a year of COVID, when people are dying to get back into sports, they are hearing all this and they're already frustrated and they throw their hands up and say, we're not doing it. There's been tons of people unsubscribing from the NFL Network online because they can't deal with this garbage. They want an outlet to not be focused on anything controversial or politics. And that's what Colin Kaepernick brought. Now that's what LeBron James is bringing to the basketball scene, what baseball is doing now. It's sad because we like our outlet to actually watch just sports and root for the home team and have that competition between different teams and your league and everything else that goes along with sports. But we can't have that anymore. Now it has to be controversial. If you don't support Black Lives Matter, then you're part of the problem, and we don't even want you to watch sports. I mean, LeBron James just came out and said that we're going to do just fine without having Donald Trump watch basketball this year because he doesn't want to watch many players kneel for the national anthem. And it's sad that we're so divisive and we just don't care anymore whether you support it or not. And if you don't support it, we're okay with you not purchasing our product.
Well, I do a little bit of back and forth on Facebook, fake book. A lot of people want to call it, which I know I shouldn't, especially as a podcaster. And I get in this back and forth every now and then with people sending these texts back and forth. And of course, I always invite them to come on the show. And these people are liberals, most of them, and they know that if you're out there listening, and you're still welcome to come on anytime. I will never get a phone call from them. They say I would never come on your show. And that's the thing. You can't even have a conversation with them. You're automatically put into a category. And, American conservative author Bloom, which I'm sure you're probably aware of, he talks about the fact that Comcast, who owns NBC, and I like to call them MSLSD. Well, they're also they're building a theme park in China, as I understand. So they have a lot of ads on the New York Times, China does, and the Washington Post. So this is the reason I think MSLSD never bashes China, just like the NBA. They want that China dollar, and I think it always comes down to the dollar, and they're afraid China is going to pull the money plug. So if these guys in the NBA, and some of them are very sincere, and I'm not targeting any one individual, but if they're so worried about human rights, what about what's going on in China and not making a stand there?
Well, they don't care about China, and that's the problem. I mean, you can see LeBron James signing a deal with Nike where they make their shoes in China with 8-year-old kids being paid a pack of cigarettes. And as they talk about human rights and they talk about slavery and they talk about Black Lives Matter, they're at the same time signing multi-million-dollar contracts with companies that produce their stuff overseas with child labor being paid very little for it with foreign trade. And they're apparently not okay with what's going on here, but they're okay with that over there. And it is very hypocritical, but they don't care. I mean, you're right. There's so much money in China within our government, within even our own products and our own companies here that that's where they draw the line. They are willing to fight for justice and for equality and for human rights issues until it comes to when their money comes in flowing from China, when they do things even 10 times worse than what we've done, and they just turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah, it's really a messed up situation, and I have been dying for sports because I've been forced to retire from my job recently, and I'm finding it hard. I'm finding it hard to watch anything, and of course, it was just pointed out to me, which I never even realized. MLB, I guess, is BLM spelled backwards, or the initials anyway. I don't know if that means anything, but somebody pointed that out to me. I thought that was a little interesting. But, do you think that the left or the Democrats, they hate this president so much that they're opposed to sending in federal agents, as most of them have said, to save, our government buildings? But they didn't seem to have a problem when they sent in our FBI to spy on Trump prior to his election. Uh, I, Andy, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around any of this. I mean, because so much of it to me is just pure common sense. And, I was raised and grew up a Democrat and voted for Clinton, Bill twice myself. But to me, the Democrats of yesterday are like the Republicans of today. And I truly think we have a man in the White House right now who does care about this country. And I just do not understand how we can be so separated. And I mean, all you have to do is turn on the TV, and to deny what is not going on is going on in Portland and Seattle and these other cities, in Chicago. They talk about the murder rate is up in all these cities, but they talk about the crime rate being down. Now, what do you have any thoughts on the crime rate being down? I do, and I can share those with you. Unless you, I'll get your opinion first, and I'll go ahead and share mine.
Well, no, yeah, you covered a lot of ground there. So let's start off with the fact that they hate Donald Trump. They do. They hate Donald Trump more than they love this country, which is sad to see because as a conservative myself, I despised Barack Obama's agenda. I didn't despise him as a man, as a human being, but I despised his agenda. We wanted to stop his progressive liberal agenda where he said he wanted to fundamentally transform America. And this is where a lot of it started with the Black Lives Matter movement. He invited them to the White House. He planted that seed to where it is today. And they still believe that Donald Trump is not a legitimate president of the United States. He didn't win because he was colluding with Russia or he was colluding with the Ukraine. Now you have elected officials saying that Donald Trump's going to have to be forcefully removed by the military after the election because he's going to be this tyrant Nazi fascist that's going to stay there and refuse to give up his powers. And they're going to have to forcefully remove him. They've already planted the seeds with this to where they've created the protesters who are already protesting and hating Trump, thinking that he is by far the worst human being on the face of the earth. And they're ready and prepared for that if he doesn't step down, if he loses the election, that they're going to create an uprising and forcefully remove him. They've already planted all of these seeds because they hate Trump more than they love America. And that's a very dangerous, very scary position to be in because they don't have the country's best interest in mind. So that's why you see up in Seattle when they had the autonomous zone and they interviewed the mayor of Seattle and they said, what are you going to do about this? She's like, oh, nothing. This is just going to be a party, a summer of love, a summer of festivity all over here in Seattle for as long as they want to. And that's why they were able to keep this autonomous zone for a week or for over a month, as opposed to federal agents coming in and just arresting all of them and wiping them out, which is what we needed to do. Donald Trump's been ready. They've asked him numerous times, are you going to go into these cities and actually do something about all these riots and protests and violence? And he said, no, I'm ready. We're prepared. We have the National Guard standing by. As soon as they want to ask for help, I'll be there to help them. But these are Democrat-run cities with Democrat governors that don't want me in there. And as soon as I do, then they're going to say that I'm abusing my power. They're going to demonize me for harming individuals. So I'm not going to do it. We're sitting by ready, and I'll save you as soon as you give me the word. But until then, you as the Democrat-run cities, you're going to continue to shoot yourself in the foot because people, like you mentioned, the average moderate Democrat, the old school JFK, maybe even Bill Clinton-style Democrat, they see the radicals that are taking over this party, that are embracing radicalism, that are embracing anarchy, that are embracing just burning this country down from the ground up. They're seeing that, and they don't want anything to do with it. And I've been saying, even as a conservative Democrat, if they're going to have any chance of surviving as a party, they need to shun this. You cannot have the co-chair of the DNC taking a picture with a pamphlet from Antifa and saying, oh, yeah, I support these guys. That's great. You can't do that. That's a radical position to take because that is a terrorist organization that wants to burn down this country and completely shred the United States Constitution. And for a party to embrace it, something like that, any moderate Democrat who's voted for the Bill Clinton style or the JFK style Democrat in the last 50 years, they don't want anything to do with that mindset. They want progressive policies, but they don't want it in a violent manner, which is why I think Donald Trump's going to win by a landslide in this, because most of them either aren't going to turn up or they're going to realize that Donald Trump may not be that bad compared to the radicals that have taken over the actual party. As for the crime rates, I mean, right now you can see gun sales are at an all-time record high, even more so than the great gun salesman that was Barack Obama when he said he wanted to get rid of firearms, and we had massive amounts of people purchasing guns then. We have massive gun sales. We have a shortage of ammunition in this nation right now because while we talk about defunding police, while we have autonomous zones and riots and protests going on all over the nation, and law enforcement even having their hands tied, we've seen numerous cities say, well, you can't disrupt these protesters. You can't arrest them if they throw Molotov, bottles at you. If they try and throw rocks at you, you can't go after them. You can't do anything. You just need to sit back and take it. So now law enforcement half the time isn't even wanting to go and respond to the calls. They just want to sit back and just let it happen. And when we're left on ourselves by our own, then we realize that our security, our safety, our personal individual and our personal liberties are in our own hands, which is why so many people are going out and purchasing firearms right now. And firearm sales and ammunition is at an all-time high. So, of course, the crime rates are going to start dropping because no one's going to tolerate this anymore. People aren't going to be stopping when they try and go out into the middle of the street and block you from driving for their protest. People aren't going to be letting them break into their homes or protest on their front yards because they don't believe in private property. We're going to take matters into our own hands, and that could lead to very dangerous things. But at the same time, that's what we have to do at times when we get pushed to that brink.
And that's, I hadn't thought about that point because the point I was going to make, and I think you're spot on there. The reason I say the crime rate's down is because of a couple of reasons. First of all, it's sort of in a roundabout way you mentioned, if I have a crime committed against me and it's not a high level crime, but someone broke into my house or accosted me or my wife, whatever. Well, if you do call and these gentlemen are arrested in these democratic cities, hell, they're back out on the streets in 20 minutes. And my guess is they're probably going to retaliate. So that might be one reason there's a lot of crimes not being reported. And the second one might be, as you mentioned, under the COVID-19, there's been a lot of people staying at home. And it's not a good idea to go break in someone's home when they are there, especially with the gun sales going up. I don't know where it's going to end. It is a total mess. Defunding the police department means one thing, folks. Defunding, I get it, and I agree with you. If you're a bad officer and you've had numerous accounts and reports made on you, yeah, it needs to be made public, and these guys need to be gotten the hell out of there. I know I worked in EMS for many, many years, and if I had one report on me, I was in the office immediately. And if I'd had a couple, I would have been fired. So I think that does need to be transparent. But defunding the police department means one thing. That means just taking money. And there needs to be more training. Don't disagree with that as well. But what they have done, they said they had the most diverse group coming in, I believe in Minnesota in years. And now it's gone. All these guys are gone. They're not going to come in. They're taking early retirement. I understand that suicide rates are up for police officers. And it's going to be sad when we have to take it into our own hands. But I'll tell you what.
Well, it is sad. And I mean, there's so many ways that law enforcement could be reformed per se, and we can actually have a better relationship with law enforcement in different communities. Number one, we need to fight back against the public sector unions. I've never been a fan of unions at all. I don't like unions, especially public sector unions. And the unions are what's protecting a lot of these police officers because, well, they're tenured and they have all this, experience or whatever. They've been there for so long on the force, and we got to protect their pension. We have to protect their salary. We need to go after the public sector unions and reform them to allow the police agencies, the county sheriff, the city police, whatever is in the community. We need to reform those to allow many of these members of the police force to expose the bad apples. And a lot of them don't like what they're seeing and what's going on with their partners or with their fellow law enforcement officer, but they can't do anything about it. And we need to reform that. Number two, if individuals in the community really want no law enforcement, want to abolish or defund the police, and they want to do community-based policing, then there's steps to do something like that. I've been advocating for since the beginning of this, is that if you don't want police in your community and you want to do community-based policing, then start it. Before we get rid of the officers, how about you start doing community-based policing? You take care of those in your community that are causing issues. You deal with it yourself. And after a year when police haven't been called to your community in an X amount of time because you've been handling it yourselves, then guess what? You've solved the problem on your own, and police will recognize that, and they can limit the amount of officers in those areas because they know that you have it handled yourself. At the same time, if you don't like the relationship with the law enforcement that's in your community because they're not from your area, they're not the same skin color, they're not the same culture, or they're not the same, they don't understand what you're really going through, then why don't you run and become a law enforcement officer to represent your community since you live there? And you can work to make that relationship better by joining the force and actually reforming it from within. There's so many things that we can do to make these amends between law enforcement and different communities all over the country, but they don't want to talk about those rational conversations. They don't want to think about it any deeper than cops are bad, they're pigs, we want to fry the pigs, and therefore we need to abolish them so we can just do our own thing, which to them means we want to have anarchy and be able to do whatever the heck we want to do without any type of repercussions.
And there again, I've talked to the officer that I had on my show a couple of weeks back. I think one of the other problems is, and without social media, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or I wouldn't. You're a general manager of a radio station, so you have your own show. But I'm using YouTube, and I have other outlets that I send my show. But I do think that social media is destroying our country on one aspect, because people now, when I was growing up, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought of going up to an officer and saying, hey, you're a piece of shit, you're a pig, whatever. And with even going a step further, would have known it was illegal, or I could have done it without getting in trouble. I think social media has showed so many clips and allowed so many people to become smart in a sort of a negative kind of way. And the officer I talked to said he knew when that day it came that he was done. He said, because nobody's going to walk up and just batter me the way these officers are being battered with nothing being done. And it's just a sad state that we're in. I hope and I pray there is a light at the tunnel. Andy, if you could stick around for a few minutes, I want to take a commercial break here from one of my sponsors. And I want to get a couple quick thoughts, your feelings on the deep state and COVID-19. Can you stick around for a few on that?
You betcha.
Okay, we'll do that right after this. Hey everyone, it's Dean with Loudmouth. Got some great news for you. Speedy Cab. They're back on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And with this heat, wow, who needs to be walking? Easy number to remember. It's 812-274-0911. These guys are fully insured, fully air conditioned, and they're now running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. What's that? Been partying a little bit too much? Oh, yeah, I've done that in the past. And you never, ever want a chance hearing this sound. That's why Speedy Cab. They're running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 812-274-0911. That number once again, 812-274-0911. It's Speedy Cab. We're there when you need us. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And once again, I'd like to thank Andy for being on today's show. Andy is a host of the Voice of Reason and also Media Network, Hoosier Media Network. I believe he's a part owner in that as well as managing several radio stations. Andy, real quick on the deep state, I've been talking about this for a couple of years, and I keep telling everyone, just wait. It's going to come. It's going to happen. And I'm still waiting. I do have a clip here I want you to hear and get your thoughts on. This is a clip, I think it was yesterday, concerning the signing of the FISA warrant, of course, which was the warrant that allowed the Trump team to be spied on. And, of course, Sally Yates now, I guess, is going to make James Comey the fall guy. Somebody's got to be the fall guy. By the way, the fall guy was a great show. I don't know if you ever had a chance to watch that or not. But anyway, here's a clip with Yates, and I'll just let you take a listen. This is also Lindsey Graham, I think, questioning her on this.
What I want to understand is a counterintelligence investigation that led to the interview. You didn't authorize the interview. As a matter of fact, you wanted to go to the White House and tell them about the problem, didn't you?
That's right. I did. I thought that was the more immediate issue.
And when you heard about the interview, you got upset, didn't you?
I was upset that Director Comey didn't coordinate that with us and acted unilaterally. Yes, I was.
Okay. Did Comey go rogue?
Then you could use that term, yes.
Now, I don't know if you had a chance to catch any of that or not. Are we ever going to, is the public ever going to see anything on this? Do you think there's ever going to be any convictions?
No, I wish there would be, and we would love to see it, but no, we're never going to see anything. Just like Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, we're never going to be able to see her behind bars. We're never going to see any of the, as you mentioned, the deep state actually get exposed. That's what Donald Trump's trying to do, which is why he's been hated so much, and they're creating so many absurd accusations against him. When you have Joe Biden's kid working for the Ukrainians in an energy company when he doesn't even have experience in energy in any way, shape, or form, but somehow he got on that panel and in that department with the Ukrainian government. They want to expose him when he's not done anything wrong, and they're desperate to cover up everything that they've been doing. So you're right. I mean, the text messages from James Comey all the way back saying that we're going to kick him out, we're going to find a way to get him out, we're going to work on this, to the interviews, to the dossier, to everything that's been thrown at him has all been a farce, has all been a lie, has all been manipulated. If you want to put on the conspiracy theory hat for a second and look at it that way, it's all been a way to try and bring him down because he was a self-funded, independent guy who wanted to do something for the nation, and they can't handle that because it's dismantling their mindset of moving towards progressive values and moving towards this larger, deep state that they've been having for so long. So no, we're not going to get anywhere with it, unfortunately, but little by little, he's starting to expose them to where we can make up our own minds and that we can start trying to weed them out, and it's dismantling it and crumbling the foundation that they've had. And I'd like to see some type of repercussions from it, but we're just not going to. It's just like the Jeffrey Epstein case. I mean, we're starting to see names come out now and who's been on the plane going to the island for years. And is anything going to come of that? Probably not. I'd love to see it, but probably not. But more and more names continue to get exposed there, and we just kind of brush it off as just like, I mean, this is the crazy world that we live in today, where we have an investigation on a president where he did absolutely nothing wrong. The ones that did do something wrong are the ones that are actually holding the investigation. Names of people who have been to Pedophile Island are not getting prosecuted or even exposed, all the way to the crazy point to where the government admitted that they have vehicles that are made not on the earth, and that we're not even talking about something like this. I mean, this is how crazy 2020 has been, between a virus, between scandals, between manipulation of the media and of the news that you and I get. And we don't know what the heck to think nowadays.
Boy, and I hate to hear you say that, even though I'm a little bit inclined to agree with you. For these guys to totally get away with this is just, it's to me, it's mind-boggling. There again, can't begin to wrap my head around it. But you're probably right. It's just, and then of course I'm sure I watched all of the hearings with William Barr, and that was the most disgraceful thing. I got so damn mad. I thought I was going to break my own TV set. And for him to sit there and remain as calm as he did, I thought I had a clip on that segment. Of course, I'm sure you've seen it and heard it. Most people out there that do care already have. But how do we get the word out to the people that don't know? And even my own family's like, man, don't talk politics. I don't want to hear that. You need to take a break, because I do get a little bit overexcited but it's like, guys, do you realize what the hell's going on in this country out here? How many Netflix movies can you watch? And I'm talking mainly about some of the younger people in my family, and I get it. I was young and dumb at one time too, but this election, we really need to wake up, because I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous about this election because my feeling is, if this president does get elected, I'm not sure there's not some Republicans that might fight against him, because I think he's going to try to clean out the whole damn swamp, including a lot of Republicans next time around.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a great opportunity with President Trump if he gets reelected, and I think he will. I'm not too terribly worried about it. I think it's going to be a big victory for him because, as I mentioned before, with the radical side that the Democrats have taken, that the moderate Democrats, the mainstream Democrats that are the base of the party that they're trying to ostracize right now, they're going to vote for Trump or not even show up to the polls. So I think Trump's going to win. And you're right, with a second term where he doesn't have to worry about reelection and play nice, you think that he's been crazy on Twitter now, or think that he's been wild with his statements or what he's been trying to do now. Imagine when he doesn't have to worry about playing politics again to get reelected, and he can just have free reign. And it's going to be a whole different Trump, I think, and I think in a good way for that sense. But what we can do is, like you mentioned, doing the podcasting, talking to individuals. And like I said, when they say don't talk politics or religion at home or at the dinner table, at the family meetings, that's what you do. You talk to your children about what they're learning in school. You talk to them about what's really happening. You hear about the way they're learning at school, and you add on to it. I remember sitting with my parents for hours at home doing homework and going so much deeper into stories of history or the founding fathers, or talking about historical events that happened just beyond than what the textbook actually said, make sure that they have a grounding and an understanding of what's really going on, where they're not just going into this at a surface level saying, oh, look, the country was founded by a bunch of white rich guys that had slaves while they talk about freedom. What a bunch of hypocrites. We shouldn't believe in the Constitution. That's what they're learning. And if we can get that out of their mind, we're not going to see a bunch of protesters right now tearing down statues of Robert E. Lee when they have no idea that Robert E. Lee actually tried to educate young black kids, during the Civil War while he fought for the state of Virginia. This is what we need to re-educate. We need to have the discussions. And if we can get people past, here's what I love. If we can get people past the bumper sticker arguments or get people past the 130 character tweet that somehow they're an expert, if you can get them past that and get them into the layers of the onion, talk about it a little bit deeper, get them to think about it a little bit deeper. My favorite thing on the radio is when someone disagrees with me, I ask them questions. I don't try to berate them. I let them talk, and I ask them questions to pick apart their argument to make sure that they can defend their position. And if they can defend it, then usually we can find some type of common ground and we can come to the end of it and say, you know what, we agree to disagree, but at least we had a good conversation. But most people, especially on social media, if you can get them past that 130 character tweet and you actually get them to think about it a little bit deeper, they got nothing. They're blank. They just hear that talking point from the Democrats or from the progressives saying Trump's bad, he's the orange man bad, Constitution bad. But when you try to pick their brains at it just a little bit more, then they come up blame. And you know that you've already won. And when they have nothing else is when they turn to the personal attack. You're a racist, you're bigoted, you're closed-minded. Once you get to that point, you know that if you can just break through a little bit more and try to make them defend their position, that sometimes you can have a productive and constructive conversation with them and actually make them open their eyes, or at least plant the seed to make them think about things just a little bit more. And if we start doing that again and learn how to debate and learn how to dialogue just a little bit more, then we could actually be productive and actually not have a bunch of kids walking around acting like children out in the middle of the streets.
Yeah, that's some great points that you make there. And I had a gentleman on my first podcast, a good friend of mine, a total opposite of what I am. He says he's an independent, but he really leans really to the left. Yeah, I asked him, I said, so you're such a Trump hater. I said, so who are you supporting? Well, anybody that runs against Trump. And it's like, what kind of damn answer is that? But you're right. And I ask people to come on all the time. I'm not going to shout anybody down. I want to have that conversation, but boy, it's really hard to find, especially out in the world of fake book. Real quick on the COVID-19, I've said all along that I thought it was way overblown. And there again, if I go out and I get it, I'm a dead man. But to do what we've done to our young people, to this economy, and I don't know if you caught this or not, Alan Bernson has just released a new book. It's on the WHO and the CDC. He says that they've had in place for 15 years a policy on what not to do if this type of situation ever happened. And for years, they said you would never, ever shut down like we did. And then what happened? We had it in March, and they did the complete opposite. Of course, I believe it was media driven. And so they did the total opposite of everything that had been in place for 15 years. And what country is it? I always get it mixed up. It's not, is it Sweden that didn't shut down?
Yeah.
Yeah. And look at them. They've got it licked. It sounds like, there's a possibility it could always break out, but they didn't shut down at all. And boy, could we not have taken a lesson from them?
Yeah, we need to take a lesson from them. Look, here's the thing. I think it has been completely blown out of proportion. What we need to do is we need to protect the elderly and those with compromised immune systems. People who are sick and who could get it very easily and it could affect them. The average death rate for the virus is in the mid to upper 60s, in age-wise, which means young individuals get it, but they don't get sick. It's mostly 98% asymptomatic, where you don't even know that you actually had it. It's the older, compromised immune individuals that we need to protect. So let's put measures in place to protect them. People that are in nursing homes, people that are in, care facilities, people that like yourself that do need extra precautions to limit your exposure out in the general public. But to close down bars and nightclubs for 20 and 30-year-olds when most of them are asymptomatic, that's ridiculous and that's dumb. To mandate mask wearing for everybody that goes to work every single day, that's ridiculous because we don't need to do that. It's their responsibility to not go to their grandparents' house after they get done working all day and exposed to 100 people and then go and visit their grandparents when they know they could potentially be carrying it. That's where the common sense kind of falls on this. And we could have done this without shutting down the economy. Like you said, Sweden, they didn't shut down. They had a bit of a hit with their older generation, so they could have done some more preventative measures on that front, but everybody's fine. They did it relatively well. At the same time, we need to follow the money like you had mentioned prior, and we need to talk about who's actually running something like this. With Dr. Fauci, who headed up the CDC before, not just the CDC, but worked in the department of the CDC where patents come from with vaccines and understands the money behind it. We start shunning hydroxychloroquine and zinc, like many doctors had talked about, and where the majority of other nations in the world are using hydroxychloroquine and zinc in order to limit people getting exposed to COVID-19, and it's working just fine for them, and they have drastically lower numbers for us. But for us, we don't want to use a simple pill that's $10 for an entire supplement that could stop it. We need to wait for a vaccine or a routine and a number of vaccines to come out and have you spend $1,000 for it and then get certified that you have your paperwork that you got the vaccine, because it's all about the money. Why are we listening to Bill Gates, who knows nothing about medicine, over a doctor who says hydroxychloroquine and zinc can boost your immunity and you can fight it off and you'll be just fine and you can prevent yourself from getting it, or it'll help you from any symptoms when you do get it, as opposed to let's wait, let's shut everything down, let's create a vaccine, and then we can make a crap ton of money because of it, because that's just what we need to do. That's the state that we're in right now. And the fact that we have doctors out there trying to say that, and they get silenced from social media, they get silenced from any type of Google search that you try and do because, well, that's just not approved. It's not approved in the United States, but every other nation out there is actually doing it, and it's working great.
Well, and there again, this goes to me along with the global warming, and I've tried to explain to people, the only scientists that are 100% on board with the global warming and the fact that it being so much of the man-made situation, they're employees of the government, folks. And I've worked on government jobs before, and it's like you build it wrong because you tear it out, and you do it again because the government will just keep paying you. And I've told people from day one, as I'm sure you have, folks, you don't want the government running anything in your life. I've been trying to get disability for 6 months. I've got a slam dunk case, but yet I still can't get it. They keep making me jump through hoops. And I'm not being, we don't have a lot of time here, so we won't even go down the road about tearing down all the statues because, of course, the past, I keep telling people the past isn't the past if it doesn't exist. And folks, we got to not destroy the history of this great country. Enough said on that. I know I'm jumping around. Lobbyists, do you think we're never going to get them out of Washington, are we?
No, we're never going to get them out of there, but they have their pros and their negatives. I am a fan of certain lobbies. I mean, the National Rifle Association is a lobby group, the largest lobbyist group in the country, and they fight for our Second Amendment rights. It's a necessary evil in Washington, D.C., and we have to be careful, which is why predominantly I vote Republican, and I advocate personally on the radio show. I advocate for party over person come the general election because there's so much money in the parties run by the special interest groups that even if you get a moderate candidate versus a more conservative or radical candidate on one side or the other, then they still predominantly vote one way or another because of the money backing them. So if a Republican goes up there, even though they may be squishy, at the end of the day, most of them are funded by, groups like the NRA, and they vote predominantly, for the most part, for Second Amendment rights, sort of thing. So I don't like lobbyists. I think that they do a lot of harm, but at the same time, some of them do a lot of good, and they're kind of the necessary evil that lingers over the political world. And you just have to do your research on which ones are good. The NRA obviously is a good one. The Second Amendment Foundation is a good one that helps fight Second Amendment, issues. On the other side, the Sierra Club and the EPA and other groups that fund the EPA, like the environmentalists, those are ones that would support predominantly the Democrats to try and take rights away, regulate things, tax things, and try and be environmentally friendly, quote unquote, when all they want is really control and power. So the lobbyists will never get rid of them. We'll never get out of the two-party system, unfortunately. And it's kind of a necessary evil. We just have to find ways to use it for our benefit to advance the proper agenda.
Well, I wish us a lot of luck on that one. Andy, I'm going to go ahead and I know you probably got other things in the works. I really appreciate you coming on today's show. I'm going to end the show on a lighter note. I want to ask you a couple of questions, one being a trivia question, sort of a trivia question. The other one, just a guy that once worked in radio many, many years ago to a guy who now works in radio. People have asked me for many years, why is it on one half of the United States, it's WXGO, and on the other side, it's KXGO. Do you have an answer for that?
That's a great question. So, yeah, it started all the way back when, and the line is the Mississippi River. Everything west of the Mississippi is the K, and everything on the east side of the Mississippi is a W. And I used to know that answer with the change in the call letters, but I don't remember now on why they actually changed that.
Okay, and the other one I want to ask you, and I think this is sort of neat, and I've not found anybody that really has answered this the way I have found it to be, the way it was answered to me. The word news. Do you know where the word news comes from?
The word news comes from? No, I don't.
North, south, east, and west. How about that?
I like that.
I do too. You know,
I like that.
And I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that's what a guy who had been in radio for many, many years once told me. So I said, hey, it makes a lot of sense to me, so I'm going to go with it. But maybe you can use that somewhere down the road. Hey, Andy, I really appreciate you coming on. Real quick, tell my listeners and viewers, if they want to join and listen to your show, which I know I'm going to be a fan of from now on, tell them what they need to do and how they can do that.
Yeah, you betcha. So it's the Voice of Reason. You can find me online at HoosierReason.com, which you living in the state of Indiana, it's spelled almost like the Hoosiers, but without the I on there. HoosierReason.com. You can find me online there. You can also find me on all of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, all of it. Just type in Hoosier Reason, and you can find me on all of those at Hoosier Reason. And national radio broadcast, we broadcast every day on the radio, on TV, on social media. We had the podcast up on all the podcasting sites with the Voice of Reason, and you can sign up for the newsletter as well at HoosierReason.com. Become a Hoosier-holic and get a monthly newsletter talking about some of these topical issues.
And once again, Andy, I want to thank you for coming on today's show. And we'll keep that conservative work going just as long as we can until at least Google and some of these other guys take us down permanently. Hey, Andy, thanks a lot again for coming on, my friend. You have a great rest of the day, and you stay safe. And I'll be back with more of you on my end right after this word. Hey, everyone. It's Dean with Loudmouth. Got some great news for you. Speedy Cab. They're back on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And with this heat, wow, who needs to be walking? Easy number to remember. It's 812-274-0911. These guys are fully insured, fully air conditioned, and they're now running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. What's that? Been partying a little bit too much? Oh, yeah, I've done that in the past. And you never, ever want a chance hearing this sound. That's why Speedy Cab. They're running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 812-274-0911. That number once again, 812-274-0911. It's Speedy Cab. We're there when you need us. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this is Dean back with you. I do want to thank Andy once again for coming on. Andy Hoosier, Media Network Operations owner, also a general manager at several radio stations out there in Kansas, and also the host of the Voice of Reason. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Great show today. I think Andy had a lot of great input. And for my friends out there that we go back and forth on social media, I try not to get personal. Makes it a little tough sometimes, but you're always free to come on and we'll talk back and forth and just converse. But this is going to be a very, very, very big election. And main thing is just vote, be diligent, be safe, and take care of one another. I also want to thank, there's so many people I could thank that have reached out to us personally. We're going through a pretty tough time here in my household. The reason being I haven't had a podcast in a couple of weeks, but we're looking to do more, and we're going to have more special guests on So if you like what we're doing, let us know. You can catch me on YouTube. You can also catch me on Facebook. I'll repost this on Facebook. We're also out there in the podcast land. We're on several different formats: iTunes, iHeartRadio. There's just so many of them. There's not any way you can't catch us if you don't want to. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank Andy again for being our special guest. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. My name is Dean. This is Loudmouth. And everyone, stay safe and have a great day.